I spent some time this summer with my parents out in eastern Massachusetts. As a student, I still get my summers off, so I can go vacation a little bit. And at one of the numerous craft shops in a little oceanside town, there were boxes of inlaid wood with what we might want to call inspirational sayings carved on them. Sanded and smoothed to a fine shine, the boxes were sturdy and beautiful. One of these carved sentences claimed to be an old Swedish proverb, and it read, "Those who wish to sing always find a song." I was instantly struck by this, not because I am any kind of singer, I can assure you that that is not the case, but because it brought to mind the hymn that we sang earlier this morning. Over and over in my head, the words, "Come sing a song with me," were ringing. And as the low hum of the hymn kept up in my ears, I found myself thinking of Walt Whitman's poem, Song of Myself, a selection of which we just read. And as I continued my wander around this little craft shop, crammed full of scented candles and napkins with witty captions below photographs from the 1950s, I couldn't help but think about how this proverb from across the Atlantic embodies so many of our principles and sources. With just these few words, some unknown wise person from who knows how many centuries ago reminded me of a metaphor with which our own tradition is shot through. The idea of a song as the soul's identity, a song as our purpose in this life. The proverb says that those who want to sing will find a song, and while I am certain that many read this as suggesting that any song will do, I couldn't help but think of this adage in terms of our broader Unitarian Universalist values. For me, this short saying cuts straight to the heart of what I believe to be the purpose of our communities. I hear in it not simply a call to go ahead and find some song, any song to sing, but rather a call to do the work of uncovering who we are, of helping others uncover who they are, and of then collectively bringing our songs out into the world in the form of action. The idea that we each have a song that is worth hearing is clear in our first principle. We affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person. We believe that each person has thoughts worth sharing. Each person has a life that is theirs and theirs alone. There is, without doubt, an intense individualism in our tradition. In his work, Song of Myself, Walt Whitman stresses again and again the idea that we each must travel our journeys alone. No one can walk our road for us. Whitman calls this road his perpetual journey, and he notes that he leaves behind no empty chair because he has no chair, no church, no philosophy. He is just himself, walking his path and aware that we each of us must do the same. He writes, "Not I, not anyone else can travel that road for you. You must travel it for yourself." We must each uncover our own song, but this search for our songs is difficult, and we need, like Whitman with his walking stick, good shoes, and rainproof coat, to be prepared for those difficulties. Sometimes it is hard to hear the voice of our deepest self, even as we acknowledge that our own direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder is one of our sources. In fact, I actually sometimes think that this is one of the hardest sources to give ourselves over to freely, because this is the source that calls us to listen deeply to ourselves and requires us to know who we truly are. As relational beings who love, respect, and rely on others, sometimes we hear those others' voices before we hear our own. Sometimes their voices are simply too loud, and we cannot see our way clear to hearing what is inside us. Vincent van Gogh is actually quoted as saying, "If you hear a voice within you say, 'You cannot paint,' then by all means paint, and that voice will be silenced." Now, I definitely don't want to suggest that every internal voice we have should be silenced. Caution is useful and life-saving on occasion, and our conscience prevents us from acting wrongly. So clearly, internal voices can be helpful. But what I'm talking about here are the voices that don't actually come from within, but come from without. Whether it's parents, teachers, friends, naysayers, these are the voices that masquerade as our own and that pretend to have originated inside us. I'm reminded of Mary Oliver's poem called The Journey, in which she talks about voices shouting their bad advice, trying to prevent progress forward. These are the voices that hold us back from trying new things, from pursuing our dreams, from getting to the heart of who we are. Imagine if Van Gogh had listened to the voice inside him that said he could not paint. What a loss the world would have suffered. It's no easy thing to know oneself, and it's a never-ending project, a perpetual journey, as Whitman calls it, to try to do so. As we always grow and change, so too must our understanding of ourselves. We don't have one song with the same melody and words to which we are restricted for all of our lives. We can live out variations on a theme. We can change our libretto and keep the same harmonies, or the whole thing can change drastically. This constant and endless uncovering and changing may sound exhausting, and it can seem quite daunting, but it is certainly worth it. Mary Oliver points out that there will come a time that there is, quote, a new voice which you slowly recognize as your own that keeps you company. So already, there's an idea that one can companion oneself on this journey. But even more, I think we need to recognize that the individualism that I spoke of before, to which our faith is so committed, is an individualism tempered by the knowledge of the value of community. We know that it is within the safety of our communities that we find the strength to pursue our deepest selves. The very existence of our tradition and of principles to which we all subscribe affirms this, and it is reiterated in our third principle, in which we covenant not only to accept one another, but to encourage spiritual growth in our congregations. Even as he writes that the journey is ours to undertake, Whitman writes that we can help point each other in the right direction. Despite the fact that we perpetually travel our roads alone, Whitman takes great pains to describe the ways in which that journey is made easier by companionship, and to indicate that while we walk alone, we need not walk lonely. Shoulder your duds, dear son, he writes, and I will mine, and let us hasten forth. Wonderful cities and free nations we shall fetch as we go. If you tire, give me both burdens, and rest the chuff of your hand on my hip, and in due time you shall repay the same service to me. For after we start, we never lie by again. I think sometimes we forget that we don't come to church on Sunday only to be nourished, but also to nourish. Belonging to a congregation and to a faith should not be a passive activity. Whether we offer comfort or a friendly ear, we become, by gathering together on our Sunday mornings and by joining this community, voluntarily beholden to each other. As fellow seekers bound by a common purpose and by common beliefs, we must be for each other helpers and deep listeners. While I seek my own song, I am not absolved from helping others to hear their own. This does not mean becoming one of the voices that clouds another's view of themselves, but rather doing what Whitman does for his fellow travelers. We shoulder each other's burdens. We allow each other to rest for a while, and we know that in our turn, we will be given a safe place to drop